What if one silent decision could change two lives forever? When a lonely Arizona rancher shelters a frightened Apache woman, he unknowingly steps into a dangerous battle for justice, honor, and survival. Stay until the end to discover the shocking truth that changes everything. If you enjoy inspiring Wild West stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment before we begin. The lonely ranch sat deep in the rugged hills of Arizona, far from the nearest town, where the wind carried only the sounds of coyotes and rustling pine trees. Ethan Walker had lived there alone for nearly 6 years, keeping to himself after leaving the U.S. cavalry. The hardships of war had taken friends, family, and the peaceful life he once imagined. Now his days were spent repairing fences, caring for horses, and watching endless sunsets across the desert. Though the townsfolk respected him, few truly knew him. Ethan preferred silence over crowded saloons, believing that a quiet life was the only way to leave his painful memories behind. Dark storm clouds rolled across the mountains one cold autumn evening. Rain fell harder than usual, and icy winds swept through the valley, shaking the wooden walls of Ethan's cabin. After finishing his supper, he added more firewood to the fireplace and prepared for another lonely night. Just as he reached for the lantern, 3 gentle knocks echoed against the front door. Visitors were rare in such weather, and strangers almost never traveled these isolated trails after sunset. Ethan cautiously picked up his rifle, stepped toward the entrance, and slowly opened the heavy wooden door, expecting danger instead of an ordinary traveler. Standing outside was a young Apache woman, exhausted and barely able to remain on her feet. Her dark hair was soaked from the rain, while dust and scratches covered her face from days of difficult travel. Her traditional clothing had been torn by thorn bushes and rocky trails, leaving her shivering in the freezing wind. Behind her stretched the empty darkness of the desert, offering no sign of anyone else. She spoke softly, introducing herself as Ayana, and politely asked for shelter until morning. Ethan noticed genuine fear in her eyes rather than deception. Without asking unnecessary questions, he stepped aside and quietly invited her inside. Warmth from the crackling fireplace slowly returned color to Ayana's face, as Ethan handed her a dry blanket and placed a kettle over the fire. She thanked him with quiet respect, wrapping herself tightly against the cold. After drinking warm tea, she explained that a violent gang of land thieves had attacked families near her village. They threatened anyone refusing to leave valuable land, rich with water and grazing fields. Several homes had already been burned, forcing many people to flee into the mountains. She had escaped only hours earlier after riding through dangerous canyons, hoping someone honorable would offer temporary refuge before the outlaws caught her. As the fire burned lower, Ayana hesitated before speaking again. She explained that among her family, seeking protection inside the home of a trusted guardian symbolized complete faith in that person's honor during times of great danger. It was never meant as a promise of romance or marriage, but as a request for safety when no other refuge remained. Feeling cold and exhausted, she quietly sat on the edge of Ethan's bed while gathering the blanket around herself. Ethan understood the seriousness of her words. Without saying anything unnecessary, he simply placed another blanket over her shoulders and carried his own bedding toward the fireplace. The cabin grew peaceful as rain tapped gently against the roof. Ethan settled beside the fire, leaving the bed entirely for his unexpected guest. He believed that true strength was shown through respect rather than force, and he refused to let fear or misunderstanding cloud his judgment. Ayana watched him silently, surprised that he never questioned her intentions or tried to take advantage of her vulnerable situation. For the first time in many days, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. Outside, however, the storm slowly weakened, revealing moonlight that spread across the empty desert and illuminated fresh horse tracks leading directly toward the isolated ranch. Just before dawn, the ranch horses became restless, snorting nervously inside the stable. Ethan opened his eyes immediately, recognizing the warning signs of approaching riders. He quietly stood, walked to the window, and carefully pulled the curtain aside. Through the pale morning light, nearly a dozen armed horsemen surrounded the cabin, their rifles resting across their saddles. The man leading them wore a black coat and carried himself with the confidence of someone used to getting whatever he wanted. His cold voice echoed across the yard as he demanded that Ethan surrender the Apache woman immediately. Ethan calmly reached for his rifle, knowing the real test of courage had finally arrived. At first light, Ethan Walker saddled his trusted horse and rode toward the nearest town, determined to stop the violence without shedding unnecessary blood. Before leaving, he asked Ayanna to remain hidden until it was safe. Instead, she quietly slipped through the hills to warn the Apache elders that the outlaws were closing in. Ethan knew that defeating armed men with bullets alone would only create more suffering. If the law could expose the truth, innocent families might finally find peace. With that hope in mind, he urged his horse forward across the dusty Arizona trails, refusing to let fear or exhaustion slow him down. When Ethan reached town, he headed straight for the sheriff's office. Sheriff William Harris had known Ethan for years and respected his honesty. After hearing the entire story, the sheriff admitted that several ranchers had also complained about suspicious land deals, but had never found enough proof to act. Ethan insisted that the attacks on the Apache families and the forged property claims were connected. Believing Ethan's judgment, the sheriff unlocked old county files stored inside the courthouse basement. Together, they spent hours searching through faded maps, handwritten contracts, and forgotten land records, hoping to uncover evidence before more innocent lives were lost. Meanwhile, Ayanna reached her village hidden among the rocky hills. The elders welcomed her with relief after fearing she had been captured. She described Ethan's kindness and explained that he had treated her with complete respect despite the danger surrounding them. Some younger warriors wanted to ride immediately against the outlaws, but the tribal chief urged patience. He believed Ethan was searching for a lawful solution that could protect both the land and the future of their people. Instead of preparing for revenge, the village gathered every document, family record, and witness who could confirm their rightful ownership of the disputed land. By midday, Ethan and Sheriff Harris made an important discovery. Hidden beneath newer paperwork was an original government survey proving the Apache community had legal rights to the valley decades earlier. They also found signatures that had clearly been forged to transfer ownership to a dishonest land company connected to the outlaw gang. Realizing they finally possessed undeniable evidence, the sheriff immediately informed the county judge. Word spread quickly across the town, and citizens gathered outside the courthouse, eager to learn the truth behind the growing conflict that had divided neighbors and filled the region with fear for months. That afternoon, the courthouse square filled with ranchers, merchants, deputies, and Apache families standing side by side beneath the bright Arizona sun. The gang leader arrived confidently, believing money and intimidation would once again protect him. However, the judge carefully examined every document while respected witnesses confirmed the history of the land. Ethan calmly explained how the outlaws had threatened peaceful families and forced them from their homes through fear. After reviewing the evidence, the judge declared the forged deeds invalid and ruled that the land rightfully belonged to the Apache community. Cheers echoed through the square as justice finally prevailed. The gang leader tried to escape before the deputies could reach him, but Sheriff Harris and his officers quickly surrounded the courthouse entrance. After a brief struggle, the outlaw and his closest followers were arrested without further violence. The stolen records, weapons, and counterfeit documents were seized as evidence, ensuring they would never again threaten innocent people. Watching the arrests, many townspeople admitted they had judged the Apache families unfairly because they had believed false stories spread by greedy land speculators. Seeing the truth revealed in open court changed many hearts and reminded everyone that justice depends on facts rather than prejudice. As evening approached, Ayanna walked toward Ethan with quiet gratitude shining in her eyes. She thanked him not only for protecting her life, but also for defending her people with honesty instead of hatred. She explained that the greatest lesson passed down by her family was that true honor came from courage, trust, compassion, and respect for every human being. Ethan smiled warmly and replied that real character was measured by actions, especially when no reward was expected. Standing together beneath the glowing Arizona sunset, they watched neighbors from both communities shake hands, rebuild friendships, and begin a hopeful new chapter filled with peace.